Ah, I know you're wondering how the dog talked to a human. Well, he didn't. I knew that dog of old. Many's the time I'd sneaked him a marrowbone from my mother's larder. Me and the dog were old friends. That night I was awakened by a whining and a howling outside my bedroom window. A terrible fright it gave me. I was half afraid to look out of the window in case it was some fearful goblin. When I looked and saw the dog, I threw a book at him and told him to be gone. He kept running to and fro until at last I understood his meaning. He wanted me to follow him. I put on my shoes, grabbed a torch, and climbing out of the window, followed the dog to the wood. It can be frightening out alone at night, a shadow amongst so many dark shapes, fur and feather and leaves. They are all one of the dark wood. Dog led me straight to the holly bush, and I shone my torch, and between the prickly leaves I saw Quang and the treasure all heaped together, his fierce eye glaring at me.
I piled all the treasure back into the sack and started to drag it out from the holly bush. Mighty heavy it was too. Just then the vagabond started growling and I felt afraid. With good reason too. Don't tip it, Johnny. Dog's sharp ears had heard the robbers returning. I dare say they wanted to gloat over their good fortune. I started to run. I stumbled and staggered through the wood with the sack on my back, banging and bashing myself against the tree roots and brambles, the dogs running behind me. It wasn't many minutes before the burglars found the treasure gone, and seeing my torch shining through the trees, guessed what had happened. I was only a lad, and the sack felt a weighty burden on my back. In another moment they would have caught me. I could feel their fingers snatching at the sack. Quang and Dog leapt at them. Fred fell to the ground, tripped up by Quang, as neatly done as any rugger tackle. Dog had sharp teeth, as I think I've mentioned, and he bit Jim in the leg as if he hadn't tasted meat for months. While men and dogs were cursing and biting and rolling about the wet wood, I ran as if all hell were behind me, for the police station. I told the police my story, and they followed me back to the wood, though we little thought to find the robbers still there. Ah, but they hadn't reckoned with Quang and Dog. They were a match for any robber. Jim and Fred were up a tree, too frightened to budge, lest Dog took another mouthful. The dogs were sitting at the foot of the tree, growling and growling as if day hadn't been already half up, and all had been dark in the wood. You could have thought it were two mighty lions, not small dogs, had kept the robbers at bay. It seems that this treasure had been stolen from a guest house that was to entertain the Queen the very next day. I bet they were thankful to see it all in one piece. Early that morning I carried Quang back through the meadow, his whiskers all silver with dew, and he was at first, as always, in the garden, to brood and ponder over the new day's smells, sniffing away at a clump of lavender, for all the world as if nothing had happened, as unperturbed as the Prime Minister himself. A voice was heard calling in the garden. The children rose reluctantly and left the potting shed. The gardener sat on, gazing into a great basket of blackcurrants. He shook the basket, as if it contained a kaleidoscope of the past, and he was adjusting the picture to see it more clearly. Ah, he said softly, Quang was a real character. A rogue, mind you, but he was a proper dog. The gardener finished his cup of tea and wiped his mouth with the back of his rough brown hand.